Another treat for you today. You know that I love these interviews, don't you? And Stephanie Rose is not going to disappoint at all. She has come up with some of the most interesting ways of helping us do that self-reflection or self-exploration. So if you are somebody like me and most of us who listen to this podcast who struggle with that compassionate self-awareness, like discovering things about yourself, but staying kind and understanding, then today is a really great podcast. So keep listening. Welcome. This is Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started. Stephanie Rose is a mom, wife, business owner, and a forever student in finding ways to know herself better. She acts as a guide for your own journey, sharing insights, tools, and practices to help you remember your magic and take aligned action each day to live a life that lights you up. All right, then, no further ado, let's welcome Stephanie. All right. Well, welcome, Stephanie. I am so excited to have you here on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. And I just start every podcast with people that I'm interviewing with this question. Tell me your story. Tell me what got you here to this place.
Well, I think my story really started about that midlife point. And that's why I knew we'd have a lot to talk about. Like, I had 2 young kids. I was just under 40, and it was as they were like getting to the point where they could sleep through the night a little bit more, and I could kind of regain some sanity and some autonomy, and kind of being like, well, what is up? Like, what now? Like, I've done the things. I have, the kids, I have the house, the career, the husband, like, now what?
Now what?
And I wanted to be fulfilling. Like, I still don't prioritize me as much as I need to, but I was aware that I needed to. It was something I consciously had to start putting effort into. And that was about 6 years ago. And so it was the journey of getting to know myself. And through that, I felt called I had to help other people do this. And so that's how my business started.
That's beautiful. And it's so akin to why I started Learn to Love Your Story as well. Like, I love hearing other women say, I mean, I've had some fits and starts, some low moments in my life, but it isn't always a crisis, right? It's sometimes just you arrive, and arrive is like flat. Like, I have the job, I have the house, my kids are in bed, I'm doing well, and there's just something missing. Like, I feel like I need to keep moving forward, but there isn't a lot of good examples of that out there that say, and when you hit this point, here's what you do. So I think there is a lot of us that have ventured out into the coaching and teaching business basically out of necessity, honestly. Like, there's nothing else out there to teach us how to do this, so I'll figure it out, and I'm going to teach other people how to do it.
Like, we don't have our communities and our tribes and a lot of role models to show. And so, like, when you hear other people's stories, that is so powerful, because you're like, I am not alone. And it doesn't have to be the dramatic, like, gut-wrenching, life turned upside down stories. It's just the everyday that wears on you, and that there can be another way to still live like an everyday life, not like,
Right.
oh, I manifested everything. I have my dream life. Everything is always perfect. But just being a little bit more optimistic and seeing your way through and giving yourself that little bit of a power to dream beyond the everyday
Yeah.
and really live like your full expression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that really kind of goes into my next question. So, what inspired you to start helping women in midlife or the people that you serve? So, you can tell us who it is that you serve specifically to empower themselves.
I started because I needed it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
truly, that's what it was. It was my journey. And like I said, I hit that point where I did all the things and it just wasn't feeling like okay, I'm here. But I didn't feel like me anymore. Like you take on all these identities throughout your life and you really lose that core sense of you. And so
Right.
I started doing practices to help me get to know who I was again, and then working to build it, to add it to my everyday life. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I don't have time to go sit on top of a mountaintop to just be a guru and like let these deep meditative thoughts come through. I don't have the time or money to like go off on extravagant vacations, like, because real life, childcare issues, school,
Mm-hmm.
homework, what are we eating tonight, like all those things. So how can we build in everyday practices to really just add that little bit of magic?
Right.
And
Would you mind sharing with my listeners what some of your practices are? I talk about a lot of mine on the podcast, but we're always looking for new stuff, especially those of us who are hustling in the middle of all of what you just
yeah,
described. So, how are you fitting it in and what are you doing?
it's still a work in progress.
Yeah,
It's
as
never
we all
done.
are.
Yeah,
As we
because
all
like
are.
we're always evolving and changing. So what worked before, like you're going to need something new. But my current practices are 4 years ago, I started a daily walk streak, and it was something to like finish the decade strong. Like I want to do this. It was like an empowering kind of thing. Like I'm gonna. So it was a bit more of an efforting experience
Right,
for that month
right.
or two. And then like, okay, I've started that strong. And then I realized like, this is really helpful for my mental health, especially as we went into the pandemic and everything was locked down. And like, I could still go outside and I could still go
Yep.
on my walk and I
Mm-hmm.
could breathe and I could listen to a podcast or I could just clear my head.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so that is something that I've continued to this day. And it's my daily promise to myself. And it took
Oh,
effort
I love how
to
you
like,
frame that.
to
Yeah.
train my family that like mommy has to get her walk in today. Um, and it has evolved into something that's like, it's the daily promise. So it's not so much efforting. It is just my self care is what I need to be a good human.
Yeah.
And I have a minimum threshold that if I hit that, it counts. And
Yeah.
that's a 15-minute walk,
Yeah.
preferably outside, because fresh air, your perspective goes beyond like the screen in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing I have that and that I am going to keep that promise to myself today gives me something, even if it's just a thread to hold on to, that like
Yeah.
I've got that.
Yeah, it hits so many parts of the key components in my program, one of which is self-compassion. So the way you frame that, saying it's my promise to myself, and then, following through literally each and every day on that promise is building that compassion and kindness towards yourself. So even on days where I'm sure you've got days where things don't all go well, you
Yeah.
still are ending that day with that promise, or wherever it is that you take that time in your day. That is a huge piece, right? We have been so indoctrinated in the hustle culture of our worthiness comes from our work product, from what we put out into the world, that we even start to treat ourselves that way. Like, if I have a bad day, well, I guess I don't deserve my walk because I got to get to da, 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 da. And then we look at our to-do list, or whatever else is right in front of us. So it's just such a lovely way that you do that, because obviously self-care, I've talked about too, is huge. And I think taking our body for a walk in nature is such an amazing gift, because even 15 minutes it's not just the walk, it's the nature. You're right. It's all of those components kind of swirling together. And I can understand how in the pandemic it was like a lifeline, right? Because we were so stuck inside, or if you went anywhere, it was an event and a production that felt uncomfortable because you had a mask on and you didn't know, does this place have that? Does this, what did the hours change? Is this place even open? Like all of that started to really weigh on us over time. So I'm sure during the pandemic, it was a huge lifeline for you.
Yes, my motto of the year was ready for anything.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish it didn't take it quite so literally, but I felt ready. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like I just decided, oh, I'm starting this streak and I'm starting today and then I'm consistent for 4 years. Like, no,
Yeah.
like there were fits and starts. It was, supposed to be like the last 3 months of the year. And it's like, well, like, like I built my runway. I started building in that time, building in that mindset,
Yeah.
and like the worthiness factor that like I can make time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the years, allowing it to shift and change and still
Mm-hmm.
calling it a streak. Like,
Yeah.
like I keep accountable by the rings on my Apple Watch.
Yep.
And, some days it is a struggle. It is not a joyful promise that I'm keeping to myself. Like, there is like struggle with it, but other times it's like, thank goodness I have this. Like,
But I think even the struggle, that's such an important time to show up for ourselves, right? So if I've put this on my list and it needs to get done and it's a thing for me, and it's feeling uncomfortable and it feels like a struggle to do it, but I show up anyway, that's the kind of strengthening that happens in the relationship that we have with ourselves, which in a lot of ways is what I am intending to teach people and learn to love your story, is how to learn to love yourself, because we haven't been taught that. We've been taught about how to care for everybody else around us. And there's some sort of assumption that you just do that without any relationship to yourself. The truth is you have to have a relationship with yourself. So if you're not paying attention to it, that's how it's developing is out of neglect. And that's not going to be useful to you either.
yeah, like, and sometimes like the days I most didn't want to go, like that's when you most need it, honestly. And so, even trudging out in the snow or in the rain, it's like, well, it's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. Like, yes, sometimes it is on the treadmill in the basement, but I don't know. So there's just something like I can be a little bit of a badass walking out here in the rain too.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So it builds that resilience muscle of like, I can do hard things. I can do uncomfortable things. I can show up for myself, and I can keep seeing how that builds. So I'd say that's my biggest practice of showing up. And then my journey started with the Artist's Way and doing the morning pages and the journaling.
Nice.
So having that mental outlet as well worked so well for me.
Yeah.
And so the combination of the two is like what I really need to do. And even though I know this, I'm still so guilty of not giving it to myself. Like, of not recognizing that, if you just journaled about it, you'd feel a lot better. You'd have a lot more mental space. You could just have less pressure. So I still need the reminders to like,
I love that.
Do it.
Those are two key practices. Journaling and walking are beautiful. That's a beautiful foundation for a self-care plan. So I know you say you're a work in progress, but it sounds like great progress to me.
Yeah.
My next question is and you were talking about resiliency, like building resiliency for yourself, and that those are opportunities for that as well. And my next question kind of goes with that. So what are some common challenges that you're helping women in midlife, or, whoever you help, the people that you serve? So what do you think are the common challenges that are popping up?
I think a lot of it is like having the confidence, like fully knowing yourself and being okay with showing up with who you are, like owning your weird and like leaning into that and showing up as that. People need you, not like a glossed up version of you. Like, the true you, the one that dorks out over your favorite show, or like whatever it is, like, but knowing that about yourself and letting that part of you into your life. Like, I love Gilmore Girls. That used to be like such a dorky thing I wouldn't say, but like, I love the show. It's my comfort show. I have made friends because of the show. I have online chats. I've met with authors who write fan fiction about it. Like, again, dorky, but I have real relationships with these people now over something that I love. Mm-hmm. And so I think for people who are feeling stuck and aren't feeling quite as resilient, like, start operating from that sense of who you really are.
Yeah, exactly.
And it won't, then you will feel stronger because it's your foundation of who you are.
Right.
And you can have confidence as you build upon that.
Yeah. And I like the juxtaposition of who you really are and finding your weird, right? Leaning into that, because you had said earlier, I think that is a big part of what we're helping people with, is just to discover their authentic self, that they've assigned themselves to so many roles that they've kind of lost touch with who they are. And some of those very simple things, like, I love a show called The Shield. It's a Marvel Comics, spinoff, right? But it had some of my favorite characters that came off of it. And then it was like, I don't know, I just got into it. I geeked out about it. Gilmore Girls, right? So I think finding those things about ourselves tells us more about who we are authentically than what our roles are, for sure. Because those have so much social, cultural, religious, family conditioning all rolled into them. It's hard to extricate what we were taught was the good girl thing to do and what we want and are authentically drawn towards in our lives. So there's just something really sweet about, finding it in that way, leaning into the weird. I love that. Are you liking what you're hearing today in this podcast episode? Oh, I am so glad. I love being able to really touch people in a place where they need the help, right? So I have two requests of you. The first one, could you just think of one person in your life that also could hear this message? I bet you could. And what I'd ask you to do is, when you're done listening today, why don't you just take the link and send it to that person, right? Let them have a chance to also gain from this the way that you are today. And then the second thing that I would request that you do is make sure that you're following me where you get your podcasts. Like, comment. I even on Spotify have questions each and every week. Use any of those outlets, because it does help me help you. What I gather from that information is what you want to hear about. And then I make sure that these podcasts are relevant to what your needs are.
Yeah. And like you said, bringing up story, like, we can learn so much through other people's stories, and it doesn't have to be real. It can be fiction. It can, like, I love reading novels and then kind of pausing and thinking, like, well, how would I have handled that? Have I ever had a situation that came up like that? How, like, what would that do to me? What would I think? What advice would I give? Like, it just gives you more practice to, like, kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes. So I've actually created journal prompts around, like, using novels, because then it's two birds with one stone, like a book that you love reading and a little, like, self-reflection, a little bit of a growth, in a comfortable space.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant, because it gets at that authenticity. You're reading a novel because you picked it up because you like it, and having journal prompts that help you self-explore and reflect because of that. That's beautiful. Really lovely. Yeah. My next question is, how can women in midlife begin to cultivate, let me say that again. How can women in midlife begin to cultivate a stronger sense of self-worth and self-confidence, would you say?
It goes back to knowing yourself and being brave enough to spend quiet time with yourself to let those things come through. And being okay, like, you did the best you could with what you had at the time.
Yeah.
If it's like a negative situation, and maybe with time now you have some perspective to reframe that or let it go, or just just know you did the best you could with what you had. Like,
yes. Oh,
like,
I love that.
like I talk about my capacity all the time. Like, my capacity is kind of maxed out because it's not actually at its fullest capacity, because I need to take care of myself a little bit better. I need to take care of my sleep. So like recognizing like, oh, my sleep sabotage is not helping me.
Yeah.
But being just building that confidence to show up and to take the steps to get to know yourself and then show up as you.
As you.
And it can be scary because you might worry that people won't like you for you.
Right.
But if they do, those are your people.
Those are your tribe, for sure they are, right? Yeah. I just said that to a friend, actually. We were having a really interesting discussion. So our kids were part of their own COVID tribe, to go back to COVID. I don't know why that theme kept coming up today, but you know, we had like a few families that once you broke down, like, okay, we're going to hang out and we're just like, we all get along and our kids get along. Okay. But these two were 3 years apart. And so it's 6th grade and 3rd grade this year, which is a significant gap in those middle school to, elementary school gaps. And so they're growing apart. And my friend was just holding all sorts of anxiety about having that discussion with me. And so we talked about it this weekend, and I was like, absolutely, like, she's in 6th grade. I don't think I would have wanted to hang out with 3rd graders when I was 6th grade. So I totally get it. And she's like, oh my gosh, I was so worried if I said that you were going to want to separate from me. And I was like, have you ever had that experience? And she's like, yeah, I've had an experience like that before. And I said, well, those are people that are gifting us the knowledge that they are not our people, because your people, they're all in. Like, I'm like, totally get what's happening there. And that doesn't affect our friendship. It just affects the nature of like how we'll hang out, because we won't do it as a group with the girls with us. But hey, not a problem. I'm all for cocktails on a Friday evening after a rough week. Yeah. So we can
without
do it
the kids, maybe.
Without the kids. So I'm okay with that too. So yeah, but I think that there's just something really beautiful about the people who see you're weird and love you anyway. Like, those are your people, of course. Those are the ones that you want to go after. Those are the really, and you need to create opportunities sometimes to test that, as uncomfortable as that is, in order to see that.
Yeah, and know that some people are there for like a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So, like, if for your friend and her daughter, like, that was the season. Like, if it wasn't meant to be, then that's okay. It's not like totally personal to you. It's just your life is going in different directions. But if you're able to stay, like, you guys be friends, like, great.
Yeah.
But just, I guess, not taking it all so personally, because you really like know, trust, and love yourself. And know, like, people are going to come and go, and you don't know what's going on in their life fully, like what capacity they're working at.
You don't. And that is a huge deal. If you don't know where somebody's capacity is, then, making assumptions that they're taking this out on you because of something you did is a moot point. I mean, like, you're going to waste time harming yourself thinking in that direction, when it could just be that the person doesn't have the capacity and is just not there at that moment for you. Carl, you have so many, I can see why we are getting along in this conversation. There's so many parallels. Your compassionate self-awareness, and you keep coming back to self-care, and that's capacity concept I think of as what I talk about in self-care is like, there's 2 kinds of self-care. There's the kinds that shore us up and keep our energy in, and there's the kinds that replenish us or restore us, because we need that. You use the juice, so you're going to have to fill it up at some point. And but how you keep coming back to things like reflection and being really kind and compassionate towards yourself in that reflection. There's so many parallels to my program here. Why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about your services and how they help?
My core offering is the Illumination Kit. And so it is a guidebook that helps women be guided through this process of remembering who they are, remembering their magic, and just giving them a way to walk through that in a no pressure way. to start that self-discovery, to actually like
Yeah.
make some lists, to write it down, and to give yourself some space to capture that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's magical about it is it does come as like a physical guidebook, because I love snail mail. And so
I love it. I just love actual things. Like I have all sorts of colored things to write on. I'm like, you're it's touching all of the places that warm my heart. So yes,
it came out of my own love of like stationery and
Exactly.
books and like touching things. So
exactly,
it is a handcrafted journal with 4 guidebooks in it. And then as an added touch to support you along the way, I send handwritten cards to go with the theme of the 4 booklets.
Oh, that's really neat. Oh, I love that personal touch that you have in that program. It's a dance, right? You want to give kind of that personal gift to everybody, but you also want to help as many people as you can. And so there's always kind of like this, how much stuff can I do and still, have my capacity to take care of me and do the things that I need to do to pay the bills and those kinds of things. So I just really appreciate that you are able to put that loving touch on your program.
Yeah, like I don't like we get so many like freebie downloads and video series, and like I've gotten a lot of value through them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so easy for them to like disappear into the ether of your computer. But if you have this like tangible book that you can come back to it, you can see it on your bookshelf, and then the practices are timeless. It's stuff I come back to all the time.
Yeah,
it's just at a new evolution.
Right. I mean, if you can come back to it, like I have, my little chair back here and have it on your little desk, and that's part of your routine at the end of at the end of the night is to sit on your comfy chair and look at that and self-reflect. That's you answering the promise. So your version of that is going for a walk, but you're delivering this in a package for people where they could be doing that for themselves in a different capacity with the journaling. And both are such important self-reflection, building the, compassionate self-awareness or that capacity for sure.
Yeah, like
so
everyone's different. I'm not going to say that everyone needs journaling and walking, but
no,
I think intrinsically as humans we do, but to do the further exploration, like, well, what kind of walking or journaling or other self-reflective practice works for you? Like yoga and I
don't get along.
I don't get along with it. Like it's not something I do, but other people, like maybe that is your thing. And that is what helps you like get into your body. So it's taking the time to really notice and then not feel bad that like everyone tells you to do yoga. It's so good. I'm like, I don't feel bad that I don't do yoga.
Like, I don't. I think that that's a really important distinction, though. It's not the activities that are important. It's the self-reflection. And so these are 2 activities or mediums that you can facilitate self-reflection through: journaling, walking, but so are things like yoga. So there's a lot of different ways to get at it. And these are just a couple that have really worked for you that you've reflected on with us today. But there's so many different ways that you can do this. And you really should be listening to your body and your mind tell you, does this fit for me? So if I'm sitting in the middle of a yoga class and I'm like, I hate this, then you hate it and listen. And that's okay.
Yeah. Like your vibe's not there. It's not going to restore you the way it might for someone else. So like let go of that guilt. Then like all those options like just fall away. Like instead of all the shoulds, like, oh, I should go to yoga. Like, no, going to yoga is not for me.
No.
And whatever it is for you, like let it go. Like everyone like loves their Peloton. Like it's okay, but that's not my thing.
It's not your thing.
And I don't have a story around it.
Yeah, stop shooting on yourself for sure, because you're right. Like there's a million different ways to do this, and some will resonate and some will not. And listen to the resonation, because that's what's telling you what works for you and what is sustainable. If you're talking about creating capacity, you don't want to be doing that with something that's taking more out of you than you're putting back into you. That's not going to work. That doesn't build capacity. That builds burnout. That's a whole other podcast. So like we don't need to do that to ourselves. And so listen to that resonance. If it it fits for you, you'll know. If it doesn't fit for you, you'll know. That's okay. Then just keep searching for the thing that works for you. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that distinction. I think that my listeners will really value that as well because they come from a variety of backgrounds and like countries. I have people downloading from all over the world. So, like, don't hear journaling and walking as the answer to all things, but rather the self reflection is really important because it gets at that compassionate self awareness and find your jam for creating that.
I say
essentially
start there. Like,
start there
because it's, I think as a society, we don't do that enough. So trust the process to start there and then leave it if it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful that you are a loyal listener and that what I'm delivering here is something that you want to be listening to each and every week. There are just other ways that you can be working with me through learntoloveyourstory.com, and I want to make sure that you know what those are. Now, for starters, all of these are links that you would find in the notes for every single podcast. And if you found me in a post on learntoloveyourstory.com, all of these links are there as well. But there are 3 ways that you can work with me. The first, and the one that I really strongly recommend, is join my Facebook group, join my community. This is a place where we can all talk with one another about what you're hearing me put out on podcasts, write in my blogs, and you really get some support, some community around making change, working towards that centered life thriving that you want. The second thing is I have a whole set of courses online, all there, right there for you, that will teach you and walk you through with workbooks, with guided meditations. So if you haven't seen that, you should at least go over and browse. And then my last and my favorite way is to meet with you one-on-one. I do a free consultation for an entire hour. It's called a midlife valuation. And that's what we're going to do. Look at the value of your midlife. We're going to compare that to the goals that you have for yourself. And we're going to help you come up with a plan where there's gaps there. And it's all free to you. So these are the 3 ways to get started working with me. In another way, if you're loving what you're hearing on the podcast. My next question is, what advice do you give women in midlife who feel like they're stuck and are not sure where to start when it comes to building a life that they love?
I'd say start paying attention to what little nudges show up. Like, what makes you uncharacteristically excited or enthused, and make a list of those things. Like, that was another place I started. Like, what things do I love? What things do, like, I don't know, I just really like it. Like, journals, like going to Paper Source and like just like being around the cards and the goodies. Like, I love that. Like, so what about that do I love? Like, and then like loving Gilmore Girls, like it's a comfort show. Like knowing, like truly knowing what your favorite foods are and like enjoying them and like just really getting to know yourself in those really subtle ways. And then that can start to bring that up in you, and then dare to dream that you can have more of that in your life.
Yeah.
In the everyday. It's not like you save up for that dream vacation once every 10 years. Like, no, like every day, what can you do?
So what I'm hearing you say in that is it's really kind of a stepwise process. So start gentle with that self-reflection, with knowing yourself a little bit. And then as you're feeling comfortable, kind of edge into pushing yourself to do some new things for yourself, and then feel through that and decide, is this something that stays or goes? And
yeah, like if there's something you've always wanted to try, like, do you actually want to try it? Or is it something someone told you you always wanted to try? And then decide like, well, maybe I should try it. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes
I think for us, we have to almost try it if we're in that question, because it's too hard to extricate. Were we told we should, or is this something I would like? And so that might be part of that self-discovery process is just, let me try some new things. And if it, if I'm sitting in the middle of a yoga room, sweating my mind off and hating it, I learned I don't like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have known if I hadn't literally embodied the experience. I would have kept thinking in the back of my head, oh, I should do yoga because I've heard somebody talk about that.
Yeah, and it might be the thing for them, but like, and then tell yourself the story that like you're taking aligned action, and this is exploratory. The success is that you tried things, and
Correct.
you tested some stuff. You put your thoughts into action.
Yeah.
And not beat yourself up like, oh, I'm hopping to another hobby. Like,
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
like you're figuring stuff out, and that's part of the
compassion.
journey.
Yeah, that's that compassion piece. That's such a pivotal piece to growth. Is we don't just beat ourselves up then if it doesn't work out. We see the journey as the success and not the arrival at some sort of end as the success. Yeah, yeah.
Because you've already been at the end, right? You've done the career, kids, house, like
exactly. That's where we began this podcast.
And that didn't feel good. Like that was technically like the end. That was a destination, and you're still left with now what? So really, like focus on the journey, and I don't know, just love the curiosity and the potential to like following your dreams.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, I love it. How do my listeners find you? And I will have all the links in the notes so they can click and go. But how do they find you, Stephanie?
I am most reliably showing up in my newsletter, which you can sign up for at fireflyscout.com.
Great.
And I do like to share the journal entries that I write over on LinkedIn, and you can find me on that under Firefly Scout. And when I feel inspired, I show up on Instagram. Like I have a weird relationship with it.
I have a weird relationship with social media, period. So I find, I similar. There are some things that I do regularly. Everything else is catch as catch can.
Exactly. So I'm very diligent with my newsletter, and I always share a personal story and an easy to implement tip, and just love to hear what, the audience that I'm interacting with, like what's going on with you. So I always invite readers to reply back also, and just
good.
Tell me.
And I mean, for somebody that's sending out stuff in the mail and handwritten letters, I imagine that if you message you on social media, you're going to hear you back. It's not like, so you're going to get that personal touch from Stephanie here. My listeners should hear that because I know they love that kind of stuff. They actually follow me because I'm more niche down like that. And so they do like providers that have like that personal touch. And it seems like that is the through line for all of your stuff, Stephanie. I have to ask though, Firefly Scout, how did you come up with that name?
It was a brainstorming over a summer night and trying to figure out like, what is something like I want people to like, that's like a little bit magical, a little bit exploratory. And, it came like fireflies dance in the summer night, and they really are magical. Their bioluminescence is an effortless glow. And I really want women to live with that. And to scout, like you can be a scout, like as a noun, but also like a verb. I want you to like scout out your life, like take action. And so that's where it came to be.
That is really lovely. I love that. And then that dovetails with the luminous product that you told us as well, right? Okay.
To help you grow your glow.
I love that. Beautiful. Is there anything I didn't ask you today, Stephanie? Anything you wanted to share with my listeners that I didn't get a chance to ask?
I just hope it inspired someone to believe that they have so much more inside them, and that to take that first step of being a little bit more curious about themselves, and to let that dreamer part of them play.
Yeah. I can tell you with true sincerity, you inspired me today. Well, I don't know about you, but I felt like there was so many synchronicities between the Learn to Love Your Story.com program that I have, my online courses, my coaching, and my individual coaching, and this program that Stephanie talked about, like how she wants us to get into that self reflection and how she thinks that once we have that self reflection, that self awareness, that we're able to really transcend and empower ourselves to choose what we want for our lives, to find our own magic and to move beyond the stuckness of midlife for sure. So I hope that you look her up because she's got some fun things I think that are going to be coming down the pike, and just the way, the thoughtfulness with which she runs her program, where she writes, individual letters to you, and she makes it such a treat to walk through a coaching process with her. I really hope that you look into it for yourself. If anything today sounded like something that you wanted to do. And remember, you can go to the notes. All the links are there that she talked about today. And I'm also hopeful that if you're not going to do that, that you at least heard something today that resonated for you, something that's going to help you learn to love your story and find your centered life thriving. All right. I just wanted to take a minute and thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this podcast even a thing. It's being downloaded all over the world, which really amazes me, but it also warms my heart because I felt like this is the kind of information that women in their 40s and 50s and 60s need to start hearing. We need to get a fire lit under us, right? But we also need to know how to go in the right direction. And it's hard when you hit midlife and it feels like life is just not clicking. I want to help you have a centered life, to feel like you're thriving and that you love every minute of your life as it is right now. And I promise you, you really can do that. And I am so happy to have you here. So I just wanted you to hear that. Be sure that you're following me in wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss when I drop a new one. And also like and comment. I do listen. If you've commented on these podcasts, you'll see that I start feeding you more information about those podcasts. All right. So I'm adding a little addition here. It's the legal stuff. Just so you're aware, nothing in any of these podcasts constitutes actual psychotherapy. Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, but everything here is just educational in nature and is a suggestion of things that you could be doing in your own life to learn how to love the life that you're in instead of waiting for a life that you're dreaming of to come towards you. So just remember, this is not therapy. And if ever you need any resources for mental health, look in my notes and I'll always have a little blurb at the bottom where you can click on a link and get those services for yourself.